So let's practice graphing some of this stuff. Here are two ordered pairs. There's one and there's two ordered pairs. And the X always goes first in ordered pairs. That's why they call them ordered pairs. They're in alphabetical order of X and then Y. So the Y is always second. So let's start at this first one, the top one, the 2 and the 5. So 2 would be X and 5 would be Y. So first we need to start with the X. So the X is 2 and it's positive 2. So we're just going to act like it's a number line. Let's find our middle 0 that gives us the center of the graph. Here it is, the middle 0 right here. And we start here for the X. And then we're going to go over 2 squares. Why 2 squares? Because that's the number we're graphing 2. So we're going to go over 2 squares, 1, 2, and I'm just going to draw an open circle right here, circling the 2 point, where the 2 boxes are, and that's where our X is. So we're going to keep that in the back of our mind. And then we're going to move over to the Y. So step number 2 is count the Y from the X point. So that X point, again, is that open circle that I drew where we found that X, the number 2. And so we're going to start at that open circle, and then the Y is the number is 5. So we're going to count 5 boxes up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to make this a red dot because the red dot, this is the only thing that you're actually going to put on the graph paper. This blue and purple that I did, this is just what you do in your head when you're figuring out where to plot these points. So the only thing that we plot is this red dot because that's 2 boxes over on the x-axis and that's 5 boxes up on the y-axis. So 2, 5 in parentheses is going to be this red dot right there. Now let's go on to the next set of ordered pairs. The next set of ordered pairs is 3 and 3. So now every single time you go to the next set of ordered pairs, you return to that middle 0. Every time you plot an X, you start over at that middle 0 again. So the X in this case is 3. So we're going to count over 3 boxes. 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes. And I'm going to draw a little circle there. So we just keep that in the back of our mind. That's where the X is. And then the Y is also 3. And that's just a coincidence that they're both 3. The Y is also 3, so when you do the Y, you start from where you left off at the X. And then you're going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3. And so this is where you plot the ordered pair of 3 and 3. So I'm going to do a little red dot there because that's the only thing that you actually put on the graph. This pink and green that I just did, you just do that in your head. And the only thing that you actually put on the graph is this red dot. So this red dot is 3 over and 3 up. And then you can draw a line through them. So this would be the graph. The red would be what it would look like, just the red, if you plotted these two ordered pairs on the graph together. Now let's try another one. We have two sets of ordered pairs. We have a 3 and a -5 is one set of ordered pairs. So that 3 would be the x, and that -5 would be the y. And then we have our second set of ordered pairs, 1 and 2. So that 1 would be the x and the 2 would be the y. Because ordered pairs that means they're in order. And in this case, you can remember it because they're in alphabetical order. X and then Y. So the X is always first and the Y is second when it's in parentheses and a commas between them like that to graph. Now let's first start with number 1, 3 and -5. We're always going to start with the X, and when you start with the X, you always start with the middle 0 right here that I'm outlining in blue. And the X is +3, so we're going to go over just like we were putting them on a number line in the previous video. We're going to go over 3 boxes. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to draw a little circle around that point where the number 3 is, and that's where your X is. So we don't actually draw this on the graph paper. I'm drawing it on the graph paper just to show you, but you just kind of do this in your head. And then we move on to the 5, or the -5, which is the Y. Now -5 on the y-axis, since it's negative, that means you're going to go down, not up. You're going to go down. So when you plot the y, you go to where you left off at where the x is, and then we're going to go down 5 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to put a red dot there. And this red dot is the only thing that you're going to put on the graph paper. That blue and pink is what you do in your head. So the ordered pair of 3, -5 is right there at that red dot. Now let's go on to the second ordered pair. And the x is 1 and the y is 2. So we're going to start with the x, of course, because you always start with the x. Now every time, I don't know if I said this before, but every time you go to a new set of ordered pairs, you start over at that center 0. You start over at that original 0 in the middle. And then you count the x from there. In this case, the x is 1, so we're just going to count over 1 box. And I'm going to draw a little open circle around that where that 1 is, so we keep that in our mind. And then we're going to do the y. So the y is 2, and it's positive, so it's going to go up. Now the y, you start from where you left off, where the x is. And we're going to go up 2, 1, 2. Now that we have both the x and the y, then we can make our dot on the graph paper. So I'm going to make this a red dot. So the ordered pair of 1 and 2 is right there. So the only thing you're going to actually write on the graph paper are these 2 red dots. And then you can draw a line through them. And that's your graph. Just don't forget that when you're doing one ordered pair, you find the X, and then you start at where the X is, and then you move the Y amount. But then when you go on to the next ordered pair, you start all the way back at the beginning again at that middle 0 in the middle of the page. Now let's try another one. As you see here, we have two ordered pairs again. The first ordered pair is -4 and 3, and the second ordered pair is -2 and -5. So let's start with the first ordered pair, and we always start with the X first. And where do we start on the graph paper? Every time we do a new ordered pair, we always go back to this original 0 in the middle, where the 0 is at the X and Y axis. So here's the 0, and the X is -4. So -4 on the X axis means we're going to go backwards 4 blocks. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm just going to draw a little open circle around that point so we remember where that X is. You don't actually draw that on the graph, you just keep that in the back of your mind. So now we're going to do the Y part of it, and the Y is +3, so positive Y is up, and we start, when you do the Y, you start where you left off at the X point. So we're going to start down here where I put this, where I outline the X, where the X is at -4, and we're going to go up 3 blocks. 1, 2, 3. And there you go. So now I'm going to take my red, and I'm going to make a red dot right there. So that's the only thing that you put on the graph paper is that red dot. That red dot is where the X and the Y come together and meet. That's -4 and +3 at that red dot. Now let's go and do the second ordered pair. The second ordered pair is -2 and -5. Now don't forget, when you do every time you do a new ordered pair, you start back at the beginning, at that middle 0 in the center of the graph. So now that we start back at the beginning, and the X is -2, so you're going to go backwards 2, so 1 block backwards, 2 blocks backwards. And I'm just going to draw a little circle around that point so we keep that in the back of our mind and we remember that that's where X is. And now we're going to move on to the Y part of it, which is -5. Now when you do the Y, you start where you left off at the X point. So we're going to start where I drew that open circle at -2 on the x-axis. And y is -5, so negative y means we're going to go down 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let me get my red, and that is where you're going to put the dot. That is where the x is -2 and the y is -5 at that red dot. And then you can draw a line through them. So that's a really awful line. I would be using a ruler if this were pen and paper. But so that's those red dots and that red line are the only things that you actually put on the graph. That pink and blue and purple and green that I did, that was just so you can see what I'm doing, that you keep that in the back of your mind. But the red dots and the red line is what you put on the graph. So let's do another one. So here we have our ordered pairs, x and y. So the first ordered pair is 3 and 5/2. The second ordered pair is -4 and -3/2. So don't let this scare you, just take it step by step and remember the previous video when we went over fractions. Let's do the first ordered pair first things first, and we do the x first. Now every ordered pair, where do we start from? We start from that center 0 at the center of the graph. And the x is 3, so we're going to count over 3 boxes. 1, 2, 3. And I'm just going to draw a little open circle around that point so we remember where the x is. Now we're going to do the y, and the y is 5 halves. Now remember what happens in fractions. 5 halves, you take the bottom number on the fraction, and that's how many pieces you divide each box into. Then the 5, that's how many pieces you color in. So we're going to start with dividing the box into 2 pieces, and this is the y, remember, we're dealing with, so the y is up and down. Now 5 halves is a positive number, so that means the y is going to go up. And where do we start from when we do the y? We start from where we left off at the x, at that open circle. So we need to divide these y boxes into 2 pieces, 2 even pieces. So I'm going to make a little line there to divide that box into 2 pieces. I'm going to make a little line up here to divide that box into 2 pieces. I'm going to make a little line up here to divide that box, or that line. Either you can think about it as in terms of the box, or you can think about it in terms of the line segment. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go up and do this for all of them just for simplicity's sake, but you don't really have to do this. But I'm doing it just in order to explain it to you. So we have these boxes divided up into 2 pieces. Why did we divide them into 2 pieces? Because that bottom number on the fraction is a number 2. So 2 pieces. And then we're going to take the 5, the number on the top of the fraction, and that's how many pieces we're going to move up. So we're starting from where we left off at the x. So 1 piece, 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces. So that's where we left, that's where we found ourselves, where the y is. So I'm going to draw a big red dot there, and that's what you put on the graph. So the coordinates 3 and 5 halves is that red dot right there. So the only thing that you actually put on the graph is that red dot. All this other stuff, the pink and the blue that I put on here, was just to explain it to you, so you can see what's going on. Now let's do the second set of coordinates. And you always start with the x, which is -4. Now remember, every time you move on to a new set of coordinates, a new numbers inside new parentheses, you go back to the original 0 in the center of the graph, and you start back from the beginning again. So this x is -4, so that means we're going to go backwards 4 boxes. So 1 box, 2 boxes, 3 boxes, 4 boxes. And I'm going to draw an open circle around that point so we remember where the x is. And then we're going to go to the y. Now the y is -3 half. Now you want to look at the sign and say, oh, that's negative. What does negative mean? Negative on the y axis means you just go down. So that's all that means. You're still going down 3 halves. It doesn't affect the number. The negative doesn't affect the number. You're still going down 3 halves. But because it's negative, you're going down and not up. on the y-axis. Now remember, what does the fraction mean? The fraction means the number on the bottom is 2. So we're going to divide, we're going to start where we left off at the x, and we're going to go down and we're going to divide those boxes into 2 even pieces. Why 2 even pieces? Because 2 is the number on the bottom of the fraction. And then the number on the top of the fraction is 3. So we're going to count down 3 pieces on the y-axis from where we left off, from the x where we left off. So 1, 2, 3. 3 pieces. So I'm going to put my red dot there. So -4 and -3/2 is this red dot right here. And the only thing that you put on the graph paper are those 2 red dots. You don't put all this purple and green and blue and pink that I had. That's just to show you what's going on. But you don't put those, you don't actually write those down on the piece of paper. It's just these red dots that you end up writing down. And then you can draw a line through them. And there's your graph.